Hey, Zaka family! Zaka is launching an exclusive membership platform to provide you with career development workshops, coaching, community, and so much more. Go to ZakaConnect.com and sign up to receive information on how to access early registration and perks. Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Taonaya Fleury Ghazarian, who is a founder of PhrenTech, which is a company that aims to provide accessible and personalized mental health solutions through technology. Tao, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you here. Pleasure to have you here. I know that title right there that you have, it definitely has a long story, right, for me. And I know we're going to dive into and find out how you got there to owning your own company, but also knowing all the things that come about through it. But before we do that, if you could just help us out, let the listeners know a little bit more about your cultural background and where you grew up.
Great. So Tao here. I was born in Haiti, but I actually came to the States when I was 5 months old. But born in Haiti, raised in the Haitian culture, and spent most of my time in South Florida.
Okay, mom and dad are both Haitian?
Yeah, they are.
Okay, so the Haitian culture. Woo.
The Haitian culture.
They would say Haiti to the bone.
Yes, Haiti to the bone. My mom likes to say I'm Americanized, but I get offended because I like my Julie Blanc, my
Okay.
Pico, I'm fully immersed and I have to have my jar of pickles in the fridge. So yeah,
Okay. You better drop it. You better drop it right now. You better. That's right. It's a lot of the individuals I've interviewed on the show. When it comes to their culture, like they've reached a point in their lives where they love it so much now.
yeah,
Back in the days growing up, sometimes a lot of them had expressed, some of the guests have been like, it just wasn't something I wanted to talk about as much.
yeah,
Now it's like as an adult, they're like, hey, look, I'm Haitian, I'm Jamaican,
yeah.
I'm from
Absolutely.
wherever they're from. They're so happy, to kind of
Yeah.
get that. And that's why I want to kind of get into the next question with you is just like talk a little bit more about this Haitian culture. I know that everyone has their own perspective on it, but like, what did that Haitian culture mean to you, especially when growing up? And like, what were some of like the experiences that you went through, growing up from the Haitian culture that kind of shaped your trajectory today?
Yeah, that's a good question. In the beginning, it wasn't easy. Coming to the States in the 80s, there was a lot of stigma around being Haitian, a lot of prejudice, even from other immigrants, surprisingly. So there was in the community, a lot of people felt like they needed to hide their identity. And for someone who, like me, is Americanized, and I do love and I'm ingratiated in American culture as well, my parents felt that it was much easier for me to just kind of blend in and not even
Mm.
tell people I was Haitian just to avoid those stigmas and prejudice. But I am very stubborn. uh, so I did not take their advice because they did it out of love. They wanted me to be able to excel as much as possible and get opportunities that they were denied because they felt like perhaps because of racism, prejudice, their accent was an inhibitor. They felt sometimes that I had a better chance as being having come here at a young age. But I told everyone I was Haitian, like right off the bat. Like I was in middle school and, I remember other kids saying like, hey, so where are you from? And I'm like, I'm Haitian. And they're like, yeah, well, I'm Haitian too.
Oh, wow.
So I felt like I was giving others permission to, identify proudly with where they came from and their ancestry. So I just continued that path forward. I've never denied it. I've always just held that identity proudly. And I think as I to be an adult, as you said, people like Wyclef Jean and other artists that were coming out and
Mhm.
people who were really starting to show their pride also gave people more permission to really be prideful of where they were from. And Haiti itself has such a rich cultural
Oh,
history.
that is true. That is true. That is true.
One of the first, Black Western civilization to gain their independence, and to break free from the holds of slavery. So there's a lot to be proud there. There's a lot going on right now in our country, but it doesn't mean that we still can't be proud of the history that and the blood that we come from.
Mm. It's sad that, a lot of times people just really attract to the negative. You know, there's
Completely.
negative everywhere you go, right? There's
Yes.
always every country, every continent, every culture, there's something, right?
Oh,
But
yeah.
when people are not an understanding of a culture
Yeah.
or an environment or anything, they then start to say, well, I don't know too much about it, but what I do know is that this happened.
Yeah.
What I do
Absolutely.
know is that this culture is known for this, and taken away from a lot of the great things that could come from it. And
Yeah.
I know that, and I could only imagine, just being in school. I'm glad you were one of those individuals that was like, look, I am Haitian,
Yeah.
and gave the opportunity to have those other young individuals be proud about it as well
Yeah.
too, right? So you kind of form like your Haitian community within the school,
Yeah.
right? You were
Yeah.
probably you're the president,
Yeah,
the
well, right
Haitian
before
club.
Zopound came out, so
Oh yeah, that's SoPal was big, big.
they
Yeah.
were,
That's it. Look, hey, wave your Haitian flag. Wave it, wave
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So were there any other challenges that you faced when you were growing up?
Absolutely. Also there's, unfortunately in our community, you can also face colorism. So there is always this idea that a lot of people thought I was just biracial, and they didn't really know my origin story, that both of my parents were Haitian, for instance. So there was always kind of a shove to the side for me where like, no, you don't belong here, you don't belong there. And,
Mm,
and
yes.
kind of feeling isolated in that sense. So I learned to kind of be a lone wolf and just kind of appreciate so many different cultures. I would just go to like the Hispanic groups and, the white kids, the black kids, the Jamaicans, it didn't matter. And so it gave me a deep appreciation of just being able to explore different groups and cultures
Mm,
and just to kind of create my own identity within an identity, so to speak. So there were challenges within the challenges themselves, and I think that I have to acknowledge sort of the privilege of having been able to blend in a little bit into the American
mhm,
culture, and some of the opportunities that probably were afforded to me because of that. So that's not to be discounted either, because I think we can acknowledge both things. We can acknowledge racism and misogyny and xenophobia, but also acknowledge some of the privileges that some of us may also have. That's not even something that we strive for. It's just something that people assign to us, so to speak.
mhm. Now, just this is a big thing, right here. Mental health, right? That's always been a big thing. But like, with you telling me these things right now, like, how did that affect your mental health when growing up? And like, what were some of the things you did back
Yeah.
then to kind of help work through that?
Oh, I got beat up, man. Like I got
Yeah.
jumped. Yeah, I was
For being
like,
Haitian.
yeah, I was bullied. I
Wow.
was jumped. It was not easy, the experience. And sometimes when you're talking about it is when a lot of these memories come up, and like you're asking me these questions. I'm like, oh yeah, like there were some good parts about it. And then I'm like, wait, there was this other side of it that I had to deal with. So it actually created a lot of social anxiety for me that I had to work through. Where I had social phobias, and it was really hard for me to actually go out in public. So those type of anxieties I had to work through. And mental health is not something you seek in the Haitian community, and I'm sure a lot of other cultures can relate to
Yeah.
that. So there's a lot of stigma associated with it. When you speak to someone in my community, for instance, there's a lot of like, oh, but I'm not crazy. There's no need for me to see a mental health therapist or a psychologist or, you know, um, a psychiatrist. So it was difficult to go through those journeys because if you're depressed, for instance, my mom would always say like "mete famsu," it's like pull yourself up. You're just supposed to get through those challenges. They got through those challenges. They've been through a lot more difficult times, especially coming to the States and rebuilding. It was a challenge for them. So they kind of expect their kids to be just as strong and not really sometimes understanding the individualized challenges that we might face
Yeah.
with the dueling cultures that we're actually living in. Because outside of the household, I'm going into an American culture, and then I'm coming back into a Haitian household with different ideals, different like ways of thinking, those different perceptions of the way that they see the world. So it was challenging on a mental note,
Hmm.
and so as I got older and having to work through those challenges myself, and then finally finding mental health care and going to therapy myself, it was life changing. It was a game changer. I was
Yeah.
able to release a lot of generational trauma. I was able to talk to my family about it and really educate my family. And that actually also led to my journey of studying behavioral science and psychology in school.
Hmm. It's the trauma that we endure as kids. I mean, some of that stuff is passed on from my parents. When they speak of it, they're like, "Hey, look." I remember my father used to tell me all the time, "Look, I had one shoe," and I'm like, "What? One shoe?" But just thinking about that would be like, "All right, he had one shoe. I can't. I can't. I got to be successful."
Yeah.
Because what is success? He was like, "I used to have one shoe, and I walked 5 miles just to go to the bus stop."
Yeah.
And I didn't put the shoe on until I got to school. So I would just sit there like, what, Dad, what? And my whole life, as a young child, my childhood, I never forget those stories. I used to be like, I would be in school like, all right, look, I'm not trying to walk to the bus.
Right.
It's just, but mind you, when you go to school, everyone's like got Jordans on and this, that, and everyone's like
Yeah.
American culture. But when I got back home, you're right. It was totally different.
Yeah.
Totally different, and it obviously is one of those things that, like you said, it wasn't a big thing at that
Yeah.
point, and but it is now,
It
and
is.
a
Yeah.
lot more people are jumping on that bandwagon because it's important,
It
to
is.
that. You know,
Absolutely.
when it comes down to like your educational background and get into like that first job, like could you express a little bit more about that? What were some of the lessons you learned?
Well, God, so my journey wasn't a straight one. And, I was all over the place. And for a while, I think my family was very worried about me because they weren't sure what path I was going to be on, what I was going to do. But like they say, like, not all who wander are lost, and that
Okay.
was definitely me. I love exploring and understanding everything that was out there. I think it's, for me, thinking of as an 18-year-old having to course out the rest of your life at 18 and understand what that looks like and what you're going to be doing, it can be difficult. Some people know at 10 what they want to be. And and sometimes it takes a little bit longer for people to find their stride and what it is that really fits with them. So I always loved technology. I always loved engineering, but I was not too keen on math. And
Oh,
I loved writing. I loved words. So I always excelled in English and writing. But math was, not something I completely enjoyed. It was more something I had to do. So when I initially signed up to go to school, it was for electrical engineering. And so I was probably the first year in school, and life happened. There was a lot of things that happened outside of those school walls where I had to make a decision and I had to put my schooling on pause. And from there, it was a very interesting path. I ended up joining the Air Force a few years later because I was like, I can't
yeah.
afford school. I'd like to go back to school. And I thought, like, I was watching that movie Alias at the time. So I was like, oh, I can go into intelligence. Who knows what my path could take me? So I joined the Air Force right after 9/11. So my mom was terrified, but it did give me a good pathway to also become a citizen at the same time, a US citizen. But I told her 2 weeks before I joined the Air Force. So I joined, but then
Two,
I got
2 weeks.
2 weeks because I know she would try to keep me home.
You gave your 2 week notice.
2 week notice. I was like, so mom, I'm quitting as
I'm out.
about. So it was terrifying, but I grew so much. I was there for 2 months, but I have asthma, so I was medically discharged. But it's amazing the kind of growth that can occur in such a short amount of time, just depending on what it is you're exposed to. It's like, do you squeeze a lemon by hand, or if you put it in a juicer, how much more can you extract? And the more pressure you're under, sometimes the more that can be extracted from you, you know. And the same way you can fertilize a plant, it's going to grow that much faster. And just depending on your environment, it can really accelerate your growth. And that's what I found with just that short period of time. So I came out of there like really determined. I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to change my life, because before then I was shy, I was indecisive, I was, you know, a small little withering plant, you know. But out of that, I was, you know, they made me dorm chief. I was, you know, in charge of the other girls. I was, you know, leading a pack, and it gave me the confidence I needed to kind of take charge of my life. So from there, I was like, okay, I have a couple of more paths I can take. So
True.
I only had a few bucks in my bank account at that time. So I was like, I don't know what to do. I want to be a real estate agent, but that's going to cost me money. So maybe I have $300. I can take a class to be a bartender. And then once I get money from there, I can switch to real estate. And that's what I did. I took that
Okay.
$300, went to bartending school, became a bartender. And then I met someone that was going into real estate marketing, and they brought me along to a happy hour. The broker there was like, "Why don't you work for us?" I'm like, "I don't have my real estate license." He's like, "Be an administrative assistant, work at the front desk, and once you get your license, then we can transfer you." Okay, I did that. Then after a year or two, I got into real estate, started selling their pre-construction real estate all up and down Midtown Miami, you know, making good money. I mean, I was making more money than I'd ever seen in my life. Um,
Wow.
and then the real estate market crashed.
Yeah.
Like, it was bad. And then I didn't know what to do with my life. I was like, oh my God, what do I do now? I have to kind of pivot. And I think that's something that we kind of forget, that we don't always have to do what we've always done, you know, and there are different paths to the same destination. And so I, you know, was like, okay, I'm going to go back to school. And at that point, I was late 20s, 27, 28, went back to school for behavioral science, because I really wanted to share the experience that I had, and the benefits of mental health therapy. So I went and went back to school with the aim of becoming a therapist. But then when I graduated, I ended up in software.
Mm. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
you just on the move over there. But the good thing about that is a lot of the guests that had come on, they said, like, you know, one of the biggest things that they've learned wasn't just the fact that they moved from one place to another, right? It was just that they were learning about
Yes.
themselves through the same time. They got to figure out how to advocate for themselves at certain jobs, because certain jobs push them to do that.
Yes.
Certain jobs push them to be more outspoken. You know, certain jobs push them to be a leader, certain jobs. So they were like, you know, even though I felt like I moved around a lot, Paul, it helped me grab some of those things that I needed in order to get to where I am right now, with owning my own business or being
Absolutely.
in this leadership position at this company right now. So I could only imagine all the skill sets that you were grabbing at that point in time. And I love your determination. I like that $300 thing. You were like, look, I got $300. What can I do?
Yeah. What can I do with it?
I'm going to bartending school, and
Yeah.
if going, you had a plan. You had a plan. And throughout the plan, it wasn't like did you have someone to help guide you on this plan?
No, but I always feel like God gives you messages and nuggets through random people. You know, if I didn't have a mentor, so to speak, but there were people randomly that would maybe drop, you know, advice here and there. Like I remember this gentleman that came up to me when I was bartending. He must have been in his 70s. I was so shy at the time, and he said, "Young lady, I'm going to give you some advice. Nothing's going to happen in your life if you're going to continue being this shy. Nothing." And I was like, "Oh, like, what do I do?"
A random dude pulls up and says that to you. You're like, what the?
Yeah. And that was it. Tipped his hat and walked off. But that stayed with me, you know? And I think, you know, it's like there's so many people in my life that I encountered that way that just gave me those little nuggets, and that I was able to just kind of put away in my pocket. And I remember after all these years, you know, his advice. And like I still get terrified to put myself out there, like to even do this interview. I was super nervous, because I'm an introvert
Oh, no,
naturally.
no worries, no worries. You're doing amazing. I'm gonna let
Thank
you know
you.
that.
Thank you. And but I always remember that bit of advice of kind of just pushing myself out of my comfort zone and really taking chances on myself. And so that was really valuable. But yeah, there was no real direct course of path, but I like learning from other people. And I like reading and really paying attention. I would always ask questions. Like when I used to go door to door selling when I was 15, I used to bring these, boxes of just random goodies and sell in like the nice neighborhoods. And I would see all these beautiful homes and I'd ask them like, hey, like, do you mind if I ask you what you do for a living? And I got to really get a good picture of how different people can live and still live the life that they want, just different professions.
Mm,
And so I asked a lot of questions, and that's how I
like,
learned.
yeah,
I
smart
probably
move.
had like hundreds of mentors along the way, and they didn't even realize it.
Indirect mentors right there.
Yeah,
Okay. So it is you are emphasizing the fact of having a mentor is good within a process, whether again from
absolutely.
point B. So yeah, a lot of the guests have stated that, and it's always good to know that. And like you said, the man upstairs, whoever people believe in, drops little messengers to come down. So that 70-year-old guy, wherever he is right now, he's
Yeah,
probably on the beach chilling right somewhere. But that message led you to being the person that you are, the amazing woman that you are. So the question I was going to ask next is that, being a part of so many different types of industries, what were like some of the benefits that you could say, that helped you out?
yeah, of being a part of different industries, I would say, gosh, I learned so much of just people. In anything that you do, getting to understand people is one of probably the most important things you can learn. Because at the end of the day, whether you're building a business or being part of a business, building a product, whatever it is you're doing, it's going to eventually get to someone. And so, understanding how people operate, what appeals to people, what motivates people. Um, those are the things that I really learned. Even I did a brief stint as a flight attendant because I wanted to see the world, and that taught me so much.
Damn,
Yeah, I did a lot.
damn,
So
Jack, you got a bucket list over there? You were like, Mom, I'm leaving. This is my 2 week notice, and this is my bucket list.
yeah, it was like a 15-year journey of just,
Wow.
ticking off boxes and really just taking a bite out of life, and I think that's the best way to explore it. Like life is kind of like a buffet. You don't have to sit and eat that one meal that people just like serve in front of you. It's like,
True.
no, I think I'm gonna go out there and see what else is out there. And that's what I did. And I think getting to know people was the best thing I could have ever learned from all of those industries.
It is truly a big thing, and I always recommend to anyone that I've ever coached and talked to, you got to travel.
Yeah.
You got to travel. With traveling, you get to see the world. You get to see different perspectives.
Mhm.
Just being in your own community. People say, "I travel. I travel to New York, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens." No, 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 no.
Yeah.
You got to get out of there.
Yeah.
The world is a lot bigger, but once you start to travel, and the fact that you said, "Look, I became a flight attendant because I want to travel."
Yeah.
You just it's like you do it, but you're also doing it for a bigger picture. It's not like I'm just doing it to make this money,
Right.
bigger
Yeah.
picture behind it, right? Money's not the
Have
only fact.
purpose.
Like,
Yeah.
I want something else from this. So I like how you're utilizing your professions to get to what you want. You know
Thank
what I'm saying?
you.
That's
There's a
beautiful.
method to the madness, as I would always tell my friends. They're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Don't worry about it."
I mean, hey, look, I fully understand it now. I mean, look, I might have to start being a flight attendant myself. I'm gonna start get this
It's
little
fun.
traveling. Forget the frequent flyer miles. I'm out.
Yeah, right.
Now, have you ever, from all the industries that you've worked in, have you ever worked in a place that was like racially insensitive? I know that is always a big topic.
Yeah. Yeah. I
You
have.
on so many different places. And
I
how
have
did
to
that?
take a sip from my red cup.
Okay, get that little sip. Come on now.
It's water. I wish it was more, but
Don't worry. Water is essential in everyone's life.
yes, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked for a software company. The first software company I worked for, it was my first kind of like foray and exposure to real corporate America, and a tech company at that. And I was really excited to get, into the business. I knew that when I left real estate, it was the most, prominent thing on my resume. And that I faced challenges trying to just get into any other industry. Um, and so I was willing to start entry level anywhere. And so when this opportunity came to me with the software company, I started off as a business development rep. So I was probably 10 years older than at least than the other business development reps. So it was a small team to start with. It was just me and another gentleman. Uh, who were hired together. He had just graduated college as well, but there was a 10-year difference because, I went back to school later. But I still had experience under my belt. I still had sales experience, life experience. And so there was a lot that I could bring to the table. And within 2 weeks of working there, I already reached out to a Fortune 500 company CIO, and I was able to book a meeting for our account executives, which actually led to a $15 million contract. So
Sure.
I thought, okay, they'd be happy with me. Things are great, I really wanted to excel and do well, and I always felt like numbers don't lie. If I just work hard enough, that's going to be the proof, and I don't need to show anything else, regardless of what I look like, my gender, how I identify. None of that is going to matter, right? Because
Mhm.
numbers don't lie. Well, I was wrong.
Oh,
No
wow.
matter how hard I worked, and no matter how much I proved myself, my boss directly was sabotaging every step. And in to also make my coworker, who was a white male, look better in terms of numbers. So he would skew the books, Salesforce, and I wasn't getting the recognition when I would sell something. There was just like crickets. But then when he'd sell something, it was just like bells ringing everywhere. And I started noticing these little differences. I'm like, wait a minute, like every time I do a deal, like it just goes under the radar. And then finally I went to my boss and I was like, I need more opportunities. I don't know why I'm not getting more opportunities. And this guy is getting, all the opportunities, but I'm actually doing better than him, like 10x. And I saw it and I was looking at the numbers. I was sitting next to him. So I knew that I was performing better. Finally, my boss called me in his office and he said, I'm going to be straight with you. We can't give you certain opportunities because you're a Black woman. And it's not because the company is racist.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's not because the company is racist. It's because the country is racist. And we just can't take the risk to send you out to these opportunities. And they're not going to receive you well. And I'm like, I said, you're not supposed to tell me that, right? And he's like, listen, I'm in the same boat too. And without giving away his identity, because he said that he was also from another country in the Middle East. And he said, look, it's the same thing for me. He was born in America, but he was a second generation immigrant. And he was like, yeah, but it's the same for me. I don't get to go to the conferences either. And I was like, oh, that's why I've never gotten invited to like the annual conference that we all are supposed to go to. So everything kind of made sense, but I didn't know what to do with that. I was like, where do we didn't have a real HR department. The HR department was literally the guy's roommate. So I was kind of at a stance. I was like lost. I was like, what do I do? So I did the only thing I knew how to do was work harder. I'm like, I'm just going to prove myself even more. Oh yeah. Like you're not going to be able to deny me
That
now.
Haitian culture right
Yeah,
there.
I'm gonna just
The
sell
resilience.
more. Yeah. And then
So power.
no, exactly. I'm like, there's no way you're gonna be able to deny these numbers. And it just never mattered. And then I realized that there are some certain clubs that they never wanted you to be part of. And it was such a bro club. There was racism, there was misogyny, and it was coming from the top down. Um, and so when you're in those type of environments, don't ever believe that you're going to change their mentality. There's no like, well, guys, there's no kumbaya there. It's better if I knew then what I know now, I would have cut my losses early and
Earlier. Yeah.
gone, yeah,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
a company that appreciated and welcomed me because I was let go anyway, regardless of how well I did. I was at the top of the sales charts and in the company and it didn't matter. And so and there was no recourse after that because I waited too long. I had already
Mm-hmm.
been with the company 3 years, and they brought in a new sales team, and they were really coy and sly about the way that they exited me to avoid litigation. So, I think that one thing I learned a lot from there. For one, that they don't own the world, they don't own my path, and I realized then and there that I was going to start my own company one day. I was going to
Mm,
create an environment that was welcoming for myself and people of all ranges of backgrounds and identities, because none of that should matter. If you do well, if you know what you're doing, you should have a seat at the table, and there should be diversity at the table. There should be a variety of backgrounds that have a seat at the table, because that's the way the world looks. You cannot
yeah,
have
that
a
is true.
function or a company or a table of people who just look all the same, because that's not what the world looks like.
First off, I'm sorry you had to even endure something like that,
Thank you.
right? Um, and is really no words to describe it. And it's I can only imagine the amount of we're talking about 3 years of your life,
Yeah.
right? You just broke it down into like 5 minutes of just breaking that down. But 3 years, 365 days
Yeah.
every single year, you had to endure that. And no matter how hard you worked, it still wasn't enough for the
No.
person at the top. And to them, if it ain't broke, they ain't gonna fix it.
Right.
Right? They're like, look, why am I going to change for this one individual? Mind you, you have a lot of great aspirations and goals, and you wanted to work hard for the company. But it's sad that even with you working hard, it would never be acknowledged that way.
Yeah, and even when I confronted my boss later on, he like denied it. He's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." I'm like, "Of course you don't, because it's illegal. Like, you're supposed to say that."
We never had that conversation.
It never happened.
Don't even worry. Don't even
Yeah,
worry. Don't even
yeah.
worry. Dang.
But I
It,
learned a lot. I'm more thankful for that experience than they probably wanted to give me. They probably what the gift that they gave me through that experience is not what they intended. The result from that is not what they intended.
true.
And I think it's up to us at the end of those type of adversities to figure out what we can pull from it to reclaim our power in it all. Because people like that aim to minimize and reduce you, and they don't want you to understand your true power. And I always think of I love like comic books and Marvel movies, and like Captain Marvel, she had like this inhibitor in her neck, and she didn't realize how powerful she was. And then when she
Yeah.
and he took it off, she was like, "Oh my gosh, like I didn't realize I had so much power." And that's what we have to realize sometimes, is that there will be the systems in place, and they've been in place for ages, that will make you believe that you don't have as much power as you do, but you're more powerful than you even realize. And
Mhm.
remove those inhibitors, then you can really cause some major impact in the world.
That's amazing. And I'm liking how you're saying that, like finding the positive or the good within it, right? And know that your voice is a lot stronger.
Yeah.
A lot of the listeners, when we hear back from them, they're like, we had a few workshops, and like we feel like we can't even say nothing. We feel like we can't even stand up and
Yeah.
say, and this is 2024,
Yeah.
right? I'm like, hold on, what do I got to
Yeah.
come in here myself with the Zaka team and
Yeah.
shut this down, because this can't be going on,
Yeah.
where people just don't feel accepted or even feel like they have a right to say something. Mind you, everyone's putting in work. Right?
Yeah.
It's not like this person's at the table trying to just get a freebie, right? Everyone's
No.
putting in work and still feel that they're not even accepted, which is crazy. So it just goes to show you that the world is so big, and problems like this are not just in one area of the world.
No.
It's all over.
It's all over. It's everywhere. And if you travel, or you just even, talk to someone from another country, if you can't get out of your country, if you can't get out of your locale, you know, the internet is a great resource, to connect with people from other parts of the world and really tap into different perspectives and see how other people are living, because it really does broaden your horizons as to other people's struggles. And like you said, it's all over the place.
Mhm. And that's one of the main reasons founder Gregory Maurice built this platform. He really wanted to connect these stories and connect these people from around the world, first generation and second generation
Yeah.
immigrants. The things that you guys share, and from these interviews and from the workshops that you guys do as well too, really, really make a massive difference. And everyone says the same line all the time. That's one of the biggest comments that come up. Where was this back then?
Yeah.
where was this back then? If someone would have heard this story from you, they would have back then they would have been like, wait, hold up, I think I'm strong enough to say something.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we're even having this conversation because there is someone that's in the same boat you were in a couple years back.
Yeah.
And
I,
now with them hearing this story, it might even uplift them to do the right thing, which is
I hope
potential.
so. I hope so. Yes. I thank you because it's important to see examples, but I always feel like we can always be the example ourselves. We don't have to wait for that example.
Yeah.
But it's hard sometimes, and I get that. But you're going to be called feisty sometimes, like the angry Black woman trope always happens. I've been called feisty way too many times.
Yeah.
I'm opinionated. Someone always wants you to stay in your lane or stay in your place. And you have to say, no, this is my place. Like
Yeah.
I belong here just as much as you do, just as much as you belong here. And this is where I'm going to be. And just keep on carving out those spaces for yourself until people get tired of seeing you show up, like like make it so apparent that you're there, that they're just like you blend in, and they're just like, wait a minute, until you stand out. Like you're just gonna like break into the house. Like I remember a friend was like, oh, she wanted to make a splash on. So I did a reality TV show once. Don't like to talk about it.
Yeah. Girl, I don't even look. I might have to start. I might have to get interviewed by you. I might have to find out how to work with you with all this. I did a reality show. I was flying planes. Next, thing you know, is I was saving the giraffes in Africa. Next,
Oh, that might be fun. I might do that next. No, but and one of the things that she wanted to make an impact on a reality show and like really show people how like, she wanted to talk about the negative aspects of being Black on the reality shows. And, I knew they were going to edit it out. So it was like everything you say now is just going to kind of be removed. I was like, but the best way to kind of ensure that your voice is heard is get your foot in the door first,
mm-hmm.
Because they're going to deny you access right off the bat if you're already trying to change things from the outside. You got to get in the inside first and then change things from there. So you kind of have to work covertly in that sense sometimes, and really just make your way in and then find your voice within that environment that you can speak up. Because if you start pushing back right away, people are going to be like, yeah, no, I'm okay, because people are reluctant to change, and change for whatever reason can be fearful. So sometimes it has to be spoon fed. And just really being able to just get your foot in the door and then being able to kind of, that's what I do. I just get in and then I'm opinionated. I'm like I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be honest about,
When I get here, when I get hired,
yes,
just
we're
know.
talks. You're gonna hear me, and I'm gonna be honest, and I'm gonna be open because that's who I am, and I think that's the best way people can grow anyway. Because yeah, never believe you're the smartest person in the room. There's always something to learn from someone.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, with all of this said, right, from aviation to tech to mental health,
Yeah.
let's just talk about being a mom.
Oh God. Oh.
Because I know the birth of your son was a turning point for you.
Yes, it was.
Let me help fan you off, girl, too. That was a turning point. Like, let's talk about that. In the mix of all of this,
Yeah.
you decide to bring life into this world. Beautiful.
Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Congratulations on that. Talk about that as that milestone in your life. I mean, there's a lot of career goals, but I know bringing a child into this world is always another goal for a lot of us.
Yeah, it was not an easy process. Well, I'm considered a mature mom. They call it the advanced maternal age once you hit like after 35. But I always say that I'm 43, but I identify myself as a 20-something-year-old.
Come on now.
Yeah. So I never put limitations on myself based on my age. Sometimes other people try to do that. Oh, you should have done this by the time you were that age. I'm like, no, until, as long as I'm still breathing and I still can do something, I will try to do it. So, at 41, I gave birth to our son. And I was really excited. We were both excited to be parents. We even moved into the suburbs to prepare for his arrival, and even before we started trying. So we had a plan as to how we wanted our family life to look like, but what we did not plan for, and I mean, there are so many risks involved with even being pregnant, and whatever, regardless of the age that that you are. And I was healthy, had no issues during my entire pregnancy. We did all of the tests prior.
Mhm.
My husband and I did genetic testing, everything to ensure, the best possible outcome. I even researched the hospitals. I made him watch documentaries on, the mortality rates in the U.S. and especially amongst Black mothers, and for him to be prepared to be my advocate should anything go wrong. I double checked my blood type and everything with the hospital, and um, as much as I planned and replanned, and as I am a planner, I did not expect what happened to happen. Um, I woke up 2 days later after giving birth to my son, because I almost died giving birth. I Yeah, thank you. I hemorrhaged quite a bit during the emergency delivery C-section, and subsequently they had to also do an emergency hysterectomy, and they also had to call in an expert surgeon to help facilitate to stop the hemorrhaging. So yeah, I was on the verge of death, and I knew it. I was telling the anesthesiologist, I'm like, I think I'm dying. My blood type is B positive. I'm gonna need some blood.
Mm.
And they were trying to keep, in the movies, like they smack you to keep you awake. That was the whole thing happening in the operating room. And the whole time I'm thinking, like, I need to stay alive for my son. I heard him crying, and I was like, I need to stay alive for him. I need to be his mom. And I knew that it would be hard on my husband, on my mother, if I weren't here anymore. So I fought really hard to live. And my doctors, there were about 20 people in there saving my life in that hospital. So I appreciate that. There was some malpractice. Someone did mess up along the way, which caused everything. But at the end of the day, I'm very thankful for the people who did save my life. And so it was a very harrowing experience. I woke up in, a tube in my, down my throat, in the ICU, not knowing what was happening and looking for my baby. It was very traumatic. I didn't realize how traumatic it was until going back home. And not everyone understands trauma, and especially when it's very like individualized. Trauma is very individualized, even if two people can go through the same thing but can experience it differently.
True.
uh, and so and sometimes there's people who are like, oh, my trauma is bigger than yours, and you don't know what trauma is. No, if you say it's trauma and it affected you, then it's traumatic. And that's the way I look at it. Did it have an impact on you that it changed your life in some way, shape, or form? It did it have for me, having that experience completely changed my mindset. The 2 years prior to his arrival, my father had passed, and 2 months before his arrival, my stepfather passed. So there was already a lot of loss that occurred leading up to that. So I kind of felt like when that happened, I was really saved. My spirit squad, as I call them, they were on the other side, like helping to keep me here. But the road that followed was challenging for myself, for my husband, my mom. My husband was unfortunately, they brought him in a little bit too late, and he saw everything from the behind the curtain. So he was traumatized as well. So we both ended up having to seek our own mental health treatment for PTSD. And it was very hard for me to find adequate care. It's, when you're looking at, like, if I'm going on BetterHelp or a lot of these telehealth platforms, I was looking for people who specialize in trauma, PTSD, and you find them, you check a box, sure. But then when I get matched up with them and we're talking through it, I started to feel like there was a disconnect, like, and in-person care, there's nothing that beats being in person a lot of times for therapy, but, telehealth has helped a lot of people to be able
Mhm.
to have access to mental health care. And I wasn't in any shape or form to leave my house at the time to go into in-person care. So I went into virtual reality as an escapism sort of a thing. Well, I had my baby, but I couldn't leave the house. I was going through my own mental health challenges, and the only escape I could find really was just kind of jumping into VR and like
Mhm.
playing some
Mhm.
fishing games or going into like some chat rooms and playing around because I wasn't ready to like meet up with the world again, and I wasn't ready to like really be out there. But I was suffering, I was really suffering, and I was, trying to keep myself together. You have a newborn, and they're relying on you. And then I also wanted to be strong for my husband, and he was trying to be strong for me. So we're all just trying to lift each other and hold each other up. And thank God my mom was there as well. But we were all mentally suffering, and we really didn't have the support that we needed. And even when I tried to find it, it was very difficult to really um, find the care that I needed for my particular needs. And that's kind of what eventually, a year and a half later, when I, wanted to revisit the concept of building a telehealth platform, because about 20 years ago, I did want to do it and for mental health. I felt like this was a good time to kind of incorporate what I've experienced myself and what I've learned, and along with the technology that's becoming even, more mainstream, which is
Yeah.
virtual reality and augmented reality. And that's how I got into starting my own company, PhrenTech.
Mhm. Well, first off, thank you for sharing, and really opening up. Thank God, praise the Lord for, you know, the many wins that you can, because that was a massive win right there.
Yeah,
And I know that how you said your stepfather had passed away. Like you're going into surgery,
yeah,
about to give birth, and you're like, that
yeah,
alone is trauma. you
yeah,
know and and I admire the fact that you said, I need to be strong for him, because energy is passed on to each
yeah.
other, right?
It is.
And like how we talked about earlier, trauma being passed on from our parents into
Mhm.
us, so you just working on being strong um helped, in significant ways. I mean, looking at you now, I mean, you would have never known that was a part of the story, right?
Thank
You see a beautiful resume, you're like, wow, yeah, okay, let's get her on, let's talk to her, right? But it's always an honor to hear you share. Our guests share these types of stories. Just being open and letting us know these things. It's yeah. So congratulations to you for pulling through.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to see the light at the end of it all. It was when you get to the other side, man, there's such a I didn't realize where I was. Every time you take a step forward, you don't know if you're still in the same place. Sometimes you're just swimming in the same place,
True.
or if you've made any progress. And one day you like finally get to the end of that, that swim or that walk, and you're like, wow, like my head emerged. And I was like, oh, I'm on the other side. I'm on the other side of it. And I just felt different, and I was ready to jump back in the world. And I had to give myself grace though, because I am impatient when it comes to healing, when it comes to getting back out there. I've been
Ready. Put me back in the game, coach. Put me in the game,
yeah,
coach.
exactly. Put me back in. It's like
Hey.
my femur could be sticking out my leg, and I'm like, I want to go back in and play,
Oh wow.
and so I had some really good people in my life, my friends that were like, give yourself grace, like to give yourself time.
And
And
when you talked about the company, build,
yeah,
right? What were like some of the first like initial goals and like some of the challenges that you were trying to solve?
yeah. So there are a lot of gaps in mental health therapy as a whole, whether it's in person, whether it's online. There are a lot of gaps, and if you speak to practitioners, they'll tell you firsthand that they really need to revamp the approach. I've spoken to a lot of therapists, a lot of clinical psychologists, like the ones we have four on our board, our advisory board, and they will tell you that the models that we have now they're centered around white males. The data, the research is driven by white male data. So the approach that they have towards therapy is not really catered or individualized for doesn't take into account the diversity of patients that actually come to mental health therapy, which
Mhm.
can cause a lot to shy away from receiving care in the first place. If you have a negative interaction with mental health care, and you already have your doubts about it, if you already come from a place of concern, a community that has stigma associated with mental health care, then you're going to be more reluctant to come back. So you won't even see the benefit, because you need to go through several sessions to even start to see the benefit of mental health treatment.
Sure.
So, really understanding that there's a real opportunity for like a huge overhaul, and the way that we can do that is through technology. There are a lot of our problems that are solved through technology in the world today. And when we talk about the ails of what technology can bring, there's also the benefits and the solving. And so I wanted to bring to the table a part of my expertise. I've worked in software for several years now. I studied behavioral science, and having read up on so many different psychology books, and having knowing firsthand the benefits of mental health therapy, I wanted to create that difference, and really bring all of those skill sets to the table to build something that will help others. Especially, I see the crisis in the adolescent community getting worse.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and, I see people who need help, and they're reluctant to get help because they don't feel comfortable or confident going into seeking mental health therapy. So, coming from a place of understanding, hey, like there's a different way we can approach this. What if we can just make this a beautiful, inviting, welcoming experience where everyone feels like it's just second nature for them to receive therapy,
Like going to school.
like going to school.
Yeah, like
Like,
all right, go to school.
yeah, okay, put on your headset. And then you're just like, I'm just gonna go, and I'm gonna, we have licensed practitioners that will be available in the application. There's going to be self-care assignments that you'll be able to do on your own. And so we're just building a real immersive mental health world that people will be able to step into. Like you said, just going to school, doing something normal, second nature, and so they can feel at home and at peace, and receiving the care they need.
Hmm. Now, a big question that I have for you, listening to all of this right here is like, you talked about all the industries that you were a part of, right? And you were working for so many different individuals, right? And then you switched to doing it on your own, right?
Yeah,
That's a big, big transition, right? So, like, could you just kind of even highlight, some of the doubts that you had,
yeah,
working for uh, these companies and corporations in a sense, and then all of this, and then moving to finding, FrenTech. Like, how
yeah.
did you work through that?
It's scary. Going out on your own is scary. No one's paying you, like, so I worked for, two startups prior to starting, venturing out on my own, both retail software. Um, and so I was a director of sales for one. So I did the whole go-to-market strategies, and I know my place in the market and being able to bring a product to the marketplace. So I was confident in that way, and marketing, sales, technology. And my husband, being the CTO, he's very well versed in software engineering and programming. So, I knew we had those components, but it's always scary going out there on your own. And, when I read the stats that like 0.23% of venture capitalist money goes to Black women, I was like, how am I going to get funding? Like, this is scary, like
All
venturing
right,
out.
hold on. Let me start claiming something else.
So I was like, this is like scary territory. And having had negative experiences in the tech industry, my first software job, I was like, how am I going to be received? Especially as me being me at the helm of this tech company.
Yeah.
And so it is scary. It's a scary prospect, but I had to think to myself, if not now, then when? If not who? Then, if not me, then who?
Yeah.
Um, and not really give myself any other options. So
Yeah.
the
Especially
day,
when you know it's for you.
yeah,
When you
this
can
is
feel it
what
inside. Like this,
yeah,
there's no turning back. This is what
there's
I
no
got.
turning back. I have to do this. And I incorporated the company the day after my 43rd birthday. And I was like, you know what? I'm doing this. And I'm taking all prospects away from, once you put founder, CEO on your LinkedIn and you say you're starting a company, that's when all of the recruiters stop looking for you to hire you for a job. So I had to take account executives and software sales jobs away and just really take a leap of faith and really believe in myself and say, I can do this. I'm going to do this and I'm doing it. And that was it. You just make that decision and you jump out there. And, I did my research. I looked out, I did some market validation. I ran my ideas through strangers, users, and practitioners. And what do you think? Is this viable? What would you use this? And people were saying, yeah, I got so much positive feedback. Oh, I would have loved to have this for my daughter. I would have loved to have this for my son. I would have bought a VR headset if it meant that they could come home from school and go into therapy and get the help they need because they were getting bullied and they wouldn't speak to me. Or practitioners that say that they would want more of an immersive experience to provide specialized treatment like cognitive behavioral therapy, which is typically very expensive and hard to find, or
Yeah.
dialectal behavioral therapy. So getting that feedback really drove incentivized me even more to keep pushing forward, because when you realize that there are people out there who would really love to use something like this, there's a need for it, then
Yeah.
you really feel like there's a mission behind it, and I felt that much more empowered to continue doing it.
And you won't know unless you build it.
You don't know
Yeah.
until you do it. Yeah.
It, we can
Like
sit, we
Field of
can sit
Dreams.
here all day and say, well, maybe this could work this way, but you got to build it.
You
But you
got
have
you
to
have
build
to.
it full out.
Yeah, you have to go out all out. And we're just in the beginning stages, to be honest. So we started the company in February. We already have immense traction just from starting the company in February and getting out there. I was pedal to the metal. My husband's working around the clock, our CTO, building the
Shout out
product.
to the hubby.
Yeah, we added two more people to our engineering team to help build it out even quicker. And we've already, made some headway. Some of the things I can't talk about yet. But we have 4 advisors on our advisory board, clinical psychologists with varied backgrounds that are excited about this too. And they're going to be helping us by contributing, in the practitioner standpoint, especially what tools that they're going to need to be able to deliver the best care possible. So we're working to make strides. We're going to Collision Conference in Toronto, which is one of the biggest 10
Sure.
conferences.
Yep. Yep.
So we'll be having a startup booth. We'll be speaking and meeting with people and really talking about PhrenTech. And so we're excited. We're just making headway. Just what you have to keep doing. It's just push, push, push. And even if you don't think that you have everything in place, do something every day,
Mhm.
towards that goal. And before you know it, like I feel like when you do your part, the universe conspires to make your dreams with your dreams to make it a reality.
I'm with you. I'm
It will
with you.
all come. It starts to come together, and that's what's been happening for us. And I'm really happy about that.
And you have, I just want to say this, you have significant amount of patience. I just listening to all this, I'm like, you know what? Let me scratch my head. There's something about this one over here. You got some significant patience,
Thank you.
right?
Why
To
do you say
endure
that?
all of this and still be like, it's gonna work out. It's gonna work out.
Yeah.
Some people would have just been like, look, all right, thank universe, thank you for letting me know it's not gonna work out. Like, it's gonna work out. Just go
Yeah,
ahead.
it has to.
Yeah, you did.
It has to, and that's what I feel in my heart. Like I'm a big believer in like really following your heart. I'm a very logical person, but at the end of the day, if I have to decide and I don't know which way to go logically, I'm gonna go back to my heart. How does it feel? If it feels right, then I'm going to continue doing it. If it feels wrong, then I know something's wrong with it. Because typically, like, if I love Malcolm Gladwell, the author, he has great books on this. And one of them is God.
Don't worry.
Blink.
You done spit a lot of gems tonight. So if you forgot an author's name, it's hey, look, we're not gonna hold you.
But he has like the Outliers, and I think it's called Blink. And I think I have it on my books. Oh, yep, I do. I have it right here.
Let's go.
Right there, Blink. So it's really a great book. If I recommend it for really understanding how we make snap judgments, and how at the end of the day, sometimes that what you call your heart, your gut, your intuition, it's really your subconscious pointing out something that you really need to understand is, and really figure out as being like a problem or the truth or something, and so that's why I always resort to my heart, because my heart is like my compass. If your head can trick you sometimes, your head,
Yeah.
because you want something so badly, you can, think of you, like my sister would say, you think long, you think wrong, and you can overthink something, and you can convince yourself that something is good, or convince something is right. But if it doesn't feel right, that's usually the way I go. But yeah, I forgot what we were talking about. Sorry.
No, you were just dropping in regards. You kind of got to the next question that I was kind of go to was like advice. Something that has shaped your career, but you hit on a couple of them right then and there. You spoke about those things that really helped you to shape your career. Now, when you look at it all together, all these experiences you've gone to, right? Advocating for yourself. That's always been a big thing here at the Zaka community that we always like to talk about and address, because that's, closed mouths don't get fed, as they would always say, right? How did you advocate for yourself, throughout this time, and even advocating to yourself to go do it,
Yeah, good question. So I think that the hardest thing sometimes, we can always be our own worst critics, and having to reset some of that noise, and whenever I would get like a piece of doubt in my head, like I'm like, no, like absolutely not. It's going to work, and has to work. And why does it have to work? Because what other opportunities are going to present itself in the way that you see fit to yourself? And I just have to constantly, do these type of talks with myself, because you're gonna have, sometimes I'm like, am I crazy for doing this? Am I crazy to think I can pull this off? Because the mental health care industry is a multi-billion dollar, industry. And even if we're trying to like capture a segment of it, it's still a multi-billion dollar opportunity, building out a company. So, just to even think, am I to be crazy enough to think that you can pull it off, and you can even have like a place in that whole entire world of it? You have to be a little bit crazy to think you can pull it off. You have to really believe that you have what it takes, even when other people might not at the time. But
True.
and you kind of you're going to face adversity. I applied recently to an accelerator, and it was back in March, and they give you feedback for this one. And the feedback was, and this was when it's funny, because we applied to several accelerators, and my husband was not in this video, but he was in the others. But this one, it was early on, I did it on my own. And so we had all the technical components, everything written out, but when we got the feedback, they have a scoring system. And the product, everything was like 9, 8, great idea, boom, boom, boom. And 2 out of the 4 judges said that the team, me, they gave me like an 8, 9, right? Like, she can do this. Because when you're doing a startup, a lot of investors, a lot of these accelerators, they look at, founder market fit. Are you the person to solve the problem, for instance? And so 2 of them said, nah, she's not the one to solve this problem. She can't do it. And that was the feedback. They gave me a 5 out of 10. And I was like, me?
Do they know who you are?
Thank you. I was like, moi.
Don't let me vouch.
I was like, I can do this. They don't know me. And if their snap judgment of me, and that's the thing we have to also understand, that there's bias across every facet of, like, I have bias, you have bias, we all have, some type of bias. So you're going to get no's for all different kind of reasons. It's not always just because, like, your product isn't good or you're not good enough. So I remind myself of that, and I tell myself, nope, they're wrong, and I'm going to do it. I am the person to do this, and I'm going to prove it to them. For me, negative feedback is only fuel, for me.
Sure.
I just take it as, and because whatever energy someone gives you, you can always transfer it and you know
Push it
translate
back out.
something that you can utilize for yourself. So someone gives me something and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to translate it into something else. For me, what you're saying is I have to just prove that I can, and that's okay, because I'm ready for that challenge. I've been there before, I've done it, and I'm going to do it again.
And you did it with life. You did it with
Yeah.
life.
Right,
That's
yeah.
it. Once you do it with life, you can do anything.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm ready for the challenge, and I'm gonna do it. And so, yeah, that you're gonna face adversity. We're already getting no's, and you're gonna get that. But for all the no's, you just need one good yes, and that's what I'm
Yes.
fighting for. And I know we're gonna get there.
Well,
So,
Tal, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for just being on today and expressing all these things. I mean, your 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 history, your journey is beautiful. That's
thank
first and
you.
foremost, right? Um, and I'm still holding on to that one line you mentioned earlier that you said your mother said, like, pick yourself up.
Yeah, mete fum su,
Mete fonsu?
mete fum su.
Oh, fonsu.
Uh
Okay, look at that. I got a little lesson right now,
huh.
right? You pick
Yeah,
yourself up every single time.
yeah,
Every single time. And no matter how hard the fall was, you were like, I got to get back up.
yeah,
That resilience that you have, that's instilled in you from your parents and also from your
yeah,
culture, it goes to show that it showed throughout the whole trajectory that we just talked about right there. All of
thank
that
you.
was just getting back up on your feet. And I commend you for doing it over and over again. And to be where you are right now, it's a beautiful family. You own your own business, right? You're in charge now.
Yeah, it feels good.
Yeah, so congratulations again
Thank
on
you.
everything, and we look forward to hearing more about your journey. And I know the listeners are definitely gonna love this episode.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. And if anyone out there wants to personally connect, I'm always happy to talk and to share any knowledge or information that I have.
All right. So again, Tao, thank you. And I want to let the listeners know, if you want to hear more inspirational stories like Tao, please check us out on ZakaConnect.com. Follow our social at Zaka Connect and follow our feed, Zaka, wherever you listen to your podcast.